have been caught, I just see blood. Prophecy, gossip, and stuck to my tongue. I could be locked in this oculus drug. Opiate open my lungs, taking the life of the young. Reckless the cloth that we cut from. Some hung like the diamonds we love. Martyrs, the martyrs, martyrdom don't run. In your family tree like the wind rush. Wash out the sound, we never said much. Don't step out, you might get crushed by the wave that I see. As high as my eye see, like 5,000 feet off the ground. I feel this feeling profound. My soul like dust in the tide. They chanting loud as I drown. You have been caught in the flood. Caught in the flood. What you mean right now? You have been caught in the flood. You have been caught in the flood. You have been caught in the flood.
I tried this I was at a presentation for the teachers at a school, and they were saying how, these are so horrible, these addictions. I goes, hang on a sec, everybody in this room has an addiction. And I pointed at the one lady, she got a big cup of coffee, one of those jumbo ones. I goes, and yours is horrible. And they all laughed. I goes, it's funny, but it's true. I goes, how many people in this room smoke? And about 4 put their arms up. And I says, how many times you tried to quit? 15, 20, right? I actually, one time, I tried to quit coffee. Because I was drinking like 3-4 cups a day. I was like, okay, this is way too much, man. So I just stopped. And by Thursday, I had a migraine. I'm like, what the heck? I'm taking Tylenol. Next day, I still got a migraine. I actually had to text my ex-wife, who I don't even talk to. It's like, something's wrong with me. I've got a migraine. I get this answer back. Have you had your coffee? Are you freaking kidding me? She says, have a Coke. It'll be gone in 20 minutes. Gone in 20 minutes. But that's how bad it can be, right? Now that's with a cup of coffee. Try to imagine what their situation's like. Trying to give up something that they're giving up. We've done our spring cleanup here. Like I said, we average 10,000 a month. This spring was a record for us, was 24,197 syringes. There's a lot of paraphernalia that we see, like the ties, the cookers, the water containers. All of that is simply garbage. And we try to tell people it's garbage. You can pick that up with a pair of gloves on, throw it away. All we actually concern ourselves with in my department is the syringes. We went 14 days this month and lost 11 people. I know you guys are like, you lose 7 people in a night in down south, like Toronto, and it's national news. Up here in August 1st last year, we lost 3 young girls in one night. Didn't hit the news, didn't hit the radio, it hit nothing. Nobody heard about it. We got across it. Because we're a small city, big city in the north, 160,000, but small. By the time we get the report back of what they really died from, nobody cares. And one of the girls who died that night, they actually listed as a heart failure. She was 23. 23 years old, you don't die from a heart failure. But we went 1 week, so far this year, we went 1 week, 7 for 7. Yeah, 1 a night. Now, when are you going to start calling it a crisis? When is somebody going to step up and say, okay, something has to change? Trying to explain harm reduction to the average person on the street is very, very difficult. Turn around, you can see the cigarette butts here. Okay? These cigarette butts, each one of them has 13 carcinogens in it. One of them being arsenic. But we walk right by this and it means nothing. So our perspective is what's changed. We see one syringe in this pile, it's like, oh my God, call 911, right? But it's the same thing. These are, if a little kid comes up, puts one of these in their mouth, they're going to the hospital. You're gonna be awfully sick. But we see a syringe and it's major panic. We're just not used to seeing them. This has been here since the 60s. The only thing that's changed is what's in them. And that's our big concern too. I look at our premier and I thought when he came in, wow, there's gonna be a lot more funding. And he cut the heck out of it, and I'm like, man, your brother.
This is my country, my damn country, and it don't mean a thing if if it don't pass the test. If you ain't never cheated or been cheated on, then take off your boots, you rhinestone fraud.
Another day, another apology from Rob Ford. He is still the mayor of Toronto, but today Toronto City Council voted to strip the mayor of most of his powers, a move he and his brother, Councillor Doug Ford, denounced as undemocratic.
You asked me a couple questions, and what were those questions?
Do you smoke crack cocaine?
Exactly. Yes, I have smoked crack cocaine.
Has the media been fair? No, they haven't. And it's not just the Ford brothers saying that. It's very obvious that the Rob's been under siege, under attack by the media from day one.
A new political name known for divisiveness has thrown his hat into the leadership ring. It's like adding gasoline to a fire.
Right now, the party needs strong leadership. Someone who is ready to clean up the mess and lead us into the June election.
You said you're going to make cuts across every ministry. You're going to leave no stone unturned. What are you going to cut in the corrections ministry and in the community safety ministry? I think you need to be upfront with people about exactly what it is that you're going to cut. You have to be honest about it.
I, Doug Ford, swear that I will duly and faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trust reposed in me as Premier and President of the Council and Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs of the Province of Ontario. So help me God.
$200 million is the plan for cutting within the public health sector, and that's important because the public health is actually administered by the municipalities, so they're the ones who are feeling the pinch in particular.
There is a long and difficult road ahead, but our determination is absolute. We will return Ontario to a balanced budget on the schedule that we are setting out here today.
Get your coat and get the fuck out of here.
The problem is we get these people in there, and this guy's just business. We're going to balance everything. I think the balance would be if you got somebody in there that was half social worker, half businessman. Said we got to keep things going. We got to keep people safe. We got to give them what they need, but let's do it fiscally responsible, which isn't going to happen, right? It's going to be a chop, chop, chop all the way.
In law, municipal governments don't deliver health services. The provincial government delivers health services, and the federal government is the government that regulates drugs. So, in strict legal terms, the city council doesn't have any authority. The way the federal government set up the process by which an overdose prevention site is open, you do consult with the municipal council, but that's the only legal role. In practical terms, what we wind up with, though, is an advocate's role. I'm the chair of the City of Toronto Drug and Alcohol Task Force Implementation body, and also I have a leading advocacy role together with Councillor Joe Cressy, who's the chair of our Board of Health. How far we need to go with that advocacy depends very much right now on what role the federal government wants to take. And we're waiting to hear whether they'll go further than just granting the authority to have the site to see if they'll participate in funding it.
A stark warning from the City of Toronto after the provincial government announced it's cutting the number of overdose prevention sites.
Today, Health Minister Christine Elliott announced she was hitting pause on these locations while she conducts a full and thorough review of their effectiveness, although she concedes they do save lives.
This is comparable to announcing that all surgeries for people suffering from lung cancer will be stopped.
I don't pretend to understand what goes on inside the Premier's head, and I discourage anybody from doing it. Having served on council with him for 4 years, I can tell you, you've got better things to do than to figure out his motivations. One thing I will say is all the evidence from all of the jurisdictions that have taken a harm reduction approach in Canada, in Europe, and in other parts of the world show that the harm reduction service is itself part of the process of giving people the option to better manage or even stop their drug use.
My name's Leila Attar. I'm an overdose prevention. I'm an organizer with Overdose Prevention Ottawa, and I'm a harm reduction worker in the city. And I focus on drug policy and larger kind of structural issues that impact the overdose crisis.
My name is Leah Bell. I'm a peer support worker. I'm also a community activist.
So a harm reduction worker is someone who works, it can be a variety of different things. For myself, it means that I work in a supervised injection site, and so I'm working, with people on the front lines, doing all the day-to-day stuff, reversing overdoses and whatnot, and then also working in drop-ins and stuff as well.
In Ottawa specifically, well, we have a toxic drug supply. Thankfully, we have a mass spectrometer that tells us what's in the drugs. I've been a frontline worker for roughly 2 years. In that time, since we got the mass spectrometer, we've just seen all sorts of different things, additives. People think that they're using heroin, but they're actually using fentanyl and a whole bunch of research chemicals. Nobody knows what's in their supply. We've seen people overdosing on crack cocaine, so there's fentanyl in everything.
So I think it's pretty similar to other cities across the country right now. We're facing continuous deaths in the community, and it's not something that's being talked about. In 2017, Ottawa Public Health reported 64 official deaths to overdose, but we know that number is much bigger, and it's increased in the past 2 years. So we're facing the same thing with a toxic drug supply, and people are just dropping left, right, front and center kind of thing.
People don't want to believe that these issues are happening in their neighborhoods. And when they are faced with the fact that they are happening in their neighborhoods, they turn a blind eye to it. And a lot of the conversations that I have with people are not that these people don't deserve health care or these people deserve a safe space to use. They just don't want to see it here. And it's really frustrating to me to continue to have these conversations that this is our neighborhood and this is our community. And perhaps if they don't agree with what's happening here, they could relocate.
Despite the fact that health is a provincial matter, the fact that we criminalize drugs in this country comes from our federal drug laws. And if we criminalize drugs in this country, we're inherently criminalizing people who use drugs. That means we're impacting their ability to access health services, we're impacting the way that they're seen by the general public. And so in terms of how do we address this, it's that we need, our federal politicians can't say it's not our problem, because it absolutely is. They're the ones that continue to enforce federal drug laws. If that answers your question, I don't know. Yeah.
It's almost 2 years ago that we just decided to set up tents in the park, and we showed up here in Moss Park, and we brought, our tents and our supplies, harm reduction supplies, Naloxone, and we were immediately sort of surrounded by police in this standoff, and but we had a lot of media presence as well, and the media were certainly our allies, and we didn't really know how it was going to go down, but we kept holding on to our purpose. It wasn't a media play. We were there to save lives. And, people sleep in this park, people live in this park, people overdose in this park, and there were no services. And so we were allowed to stay. The police superintendent said it was up to his discretion, and he said, in what I think is a historic statement, that the crisis supersedes the law, and he allowed us to stay.
A closely guarded secret gets out.
Unfortunately, there's some bylaws that are going to be broken there.
And for an hour, there's a delicate dance between pop-up organizers and Toronto police here at Moss Park. Then, harm reduction staff are given the green light to stay.
Although Toronto Police doesn't necessarily agree totally with an injection site like this popping up, because we do have the aspect of illegal drugs coming and going, the crisis supersedes that at this point in time.
We know what we're doing, and we just want to help save people's lives. We just don't want to go to memorials, funerals anymore. We don't want to see more dead people.
We didn't have supervised injection in Toronto before we opened, so we didn't really have a workforce with this experience. Certainly we had a lot of people who had vast harm reduction expertise, but people hadn't really supervised, someone else shooting dope, and then And then in terms of like responding to overdose, we really needed to rely on the community, because the people who use substances have been resuscitating their friends in their community for forever. And so we deferred to their expertise. And I'm saying that as a nurse who, you know, resuscitated people in critical care. I got involved in harm reduction following the death of my brother from overdose. So my brother Brad was very closely connected to Toronto Public Health The Works, their harm reduction program. He was there a lot. They often had a hard time getting rid of him at the end of the day. He felt really comfortable there, and he would avail himself to the nursing services, the harm reduction supplies. But in 2015, that's all there was available. And so he was released from jail and overdosed and died about 6 weeks later. I had always worked in a hospital as a nurse, so I didn't really know about community-based resources or even about addictions care in general. And at the time, I really just wanted my brother to get his shit together and to stop using drugs. And I didn't know there was another way that, and that's sort of how I learned about harm reduction. I met people from the works who knew him, and they were really saddened by his death. And at the time, Toronto was pushing for the 3 supervised injection sites. And so I was asked to sort of help support those services. And for me, it was a kind of a no-brainer, because those services would have helped Brad. And so I wanted to absolutely do what I could to support the evidence-based healthcare that is supervised consumption. So I did some advocacy and kind of threw myself into harm reduction advocacy after his death.
Roger was amazing, absolutely amazing. He loved me. I mean, we didn't see each other without saying, "I love you, Mom." Or on Mother's Day, Roger passed away on June the 13th. In May, just a month before, he called me all excited, "Mom, I'm coming over, I'm coming over." I said, "Oh, good," and I was out, and he said, "Come, I'm here, I'm here." I said, "Well, I'm almost home," and I got home, and he said, close your eyes. So I went into the bedroom, closed my eyes, and heard all this noise. And him and his friend had came, and when I came back in, this rug was on the floor, and he said it was for Mother's Day. So, he'd been working down at the home show at the Canada Blooms, and I'd gone to visit him down there, and he worked in a carpet stall, and he said, "Mom, come, let me show you all the carpets. Which one do you like?" And I looked through them all, and I said, "I like that one." Oh, he said, "I like that one too, Mom." And that was the end of it. That was in April. And then in May, he showed up here at my door with the carpet he'd saved up his money for. And I brought this out because I cherish it so much. He says, "Mom, thank you so much for being there for me through all my ups and downs. I would not still be here if it wasn't for you. I hope you like your gift and smile every day when you see it. I love you, Roger." And that's the carpet. And we sat on that carpet. We had to I've got pictures of us sitting on the carpet and laughing. He had a big heart, and who would think from that day, like weeks later, that he would not be with us? I think the hardest adjustment for him in recovery was losing friends. That's hard, when you can't help someone that you care for. and you're trying to keep yourself well as well, you know, like that. I think that was the most difficult thing that happened for Roger, was losing. He's lost many friends, but I think there was just one too many, and it was painful. When I saw Roger's pain at losing his friend, that was harder than my pain at losing Roger, because my pain for losing Roger is just my pain. It's, you know, but when I saw Roger's pain and I couldn't help him, you know, I was helpless to help him with the pain and the grief that he was feeling. That, I'll never forget that, when he lost his friend in April. We brought him over here. I didn't know he would make it through the day of that day. But we kind of let our guard down, because weeks went by and he appeared to be back on an even keel, but I don't think it left him. When things are so big, you think, oh, that's so big, I can't handle that. You have to start with one thing. And my one story that someone told me a long time ago and stuck with me is that the starfish story, where the little boy is running on the beach and the tides come in and washed up all the hundreds of starfish. Tides gone out and all the starfish are lying on the beach. They're going to bake in the noonday sun, and an old man watched this little boy picking up the starfish and throwing them into the water. The old man says, "Why are you bothering? You can't make a difference. There's too many of them." And he picks up the one starfish and says, "I made a difference to this one," and put it in the water. You know, we have to start with a difference with this one person, this person that you're sitting beside on the bus, someone that's sitting outside of McDonald's. Just, "Are you okay, son? How can I help you?" And that's why I carry my Naloxone. Make a difference.
Marchese produces 2 different kinds of Naloxone kits, and these are the ones that we provide training on to all of our clients. And there's a reason why we train on both kinds of kits. Almost everyone knows about the nasal spray version, but the injectable version is also highly effective. It's as effective, and according to some evidence, perhaps requires fewer extra doses to reverse an opioid overdose. So this is why we train on both kinds. The first thing you want to establish is really, are they responsive? Like, are they truly in a crisis? So you're going to approach them and you'll try and stimulate them. So shout, shake, rub their sternum with your knuckles, right? And see if they respond. If they're not responsive to that, then we really want to know, are they suffering from an opioid overdose? And there's certain hallmark signs and symptoms that we train people to look for. So in this case, we're dealing with the injectable form. So I'm quickly going to show you how that works. So you want to put on your nitrile gloves. You're going to take one of these safety syringes, just peel it open. There is a cap on here, and in one smooth motion, you kind of just remove that cap from the tip. You take the tip of the needle, and if you're a bit shaky or nervous, you can brace one hand against the other to make things more steady. Then you insert the needle tip there, push it all the way in, flip it over. There are 2 main sites that I train where we're going to do the injection. We're injecting into a muscle, not into a vein. So the deltoid muscle or the thigh muscle, these are the 2 main targets. So once you've got it in, make sure it's fully in all the way. Then you're going to depress the plunger, which is going to administer the medication. At the very end, we're going to put a little extra pressure, which causes the needle to retract into the center of the barrel. So that's the safety feature in this syringe. So these days, CPR doesn't teach rescue breathing as a requirement, but because opioids cause hypoxia, oxygen is really important. So we do recommend rescue breathing if the rescuer is willing to give that. For that reason, there is a rescue breathing barrier inside the kit. When it's opened, you can see that it has this bit. So that's what's going to go into the victim's mouth. And all of the kits that Marchese provides have a one-way valve. So this is additional safety for the rescuer, so that air goes in this way, but nothing comes back up this way from the victim to the rescuer. So after 30 compressions, we're going to switch back to 3 breaths, 30 compressions, 3 breaths, 30 compressions. We're going to do 4 sets in total. So the victim will have received 120 compressions, 12 breaths in the span of about 2 or 3 minutes. So after that, again, we're assessing. At all times, we're assessing to see if the victim is recovering. If they are not recovering, then we're going to hit them with the other dose of naloxone. So we're just going to repeat that process. You saw it actually doesn't take that long. It takes longer to teach it than to actually do it. And then we're going to use a different muscle. So we're going to do the other deltoid or use a leg if we did just use a different muscle. Massage, assess for 5 or 10 seconds, and see how the victim is responding. Naloxone only works for opioid overdose. It does not reverse stimulant overdoses like crystal meth or cocaine. It only works for opioids. So the important thing to remember is that, you know, you've done your best to identify whether this person's having an opioid overdose. If you make a mistake and you misidentify and they're actually not suffering from an opioid overdose, or they're overdosed on something else, the naloxone is not going to harm them, because all it does is block opioid receptors. So they're not going to experience any harm from that. And in any case, you're protected by the Good Samaritan Act. You're trying to sincerely save someone's life in a crisis situation. So the Good Samaritan Act, Ontario and federally, are going to protect you. Again, in the nasal spray kit, there are 2 doses of naloxone. There's rescue breathing barrier, pair of gloves, just like it is with the injectable, with the absence of the syringes perhaps. And the nasal spray contains a single dose. So once it's peeled open from there, you peel that open, and you end up with something like this. Now this is a demonstration unit. And with our gloves on, our thumb on the bottom plunger, fingers on either side, we're going to insert this into the victim's nostril. And we're going to be careful not to point it towards the septum or the middle part of the nose. We're going to keep it more or less straight, following the nasal passage. And we're going to administer a quick burst like that, which is going to mist that medication into the nasal cavity from which it's going to be absorbed. And if they are showing signs of recovery at any point, we move them into the recovery position, which is the very last step. So recovery position, you've got the victim on their back. You're going to bend up one knee, bend up one elbow, and then roll them either away from yourself or towards yourself, so that their upper leg is draped over like this, their upper arm is tucked under their face, and their lower arm is extended out. What this does is it makes it easier for the victim to breathe, and if they happen to vomit, they're less likely to regurgitate or choke on that. It's possible that the victim might go back under because of the potency of the opioids that are out there these days, and the fact that naloxone is a temporary blocker. It lasts, you know, maybe an hour to 2 hours. So we're just going to be watchful and observing and trying to support the victim if they need. It's possible they may get up and take off. So that sometimes happens, and there's nothing you can do about that. You've helped save their life, sort of, you've done your job. But if you can make sure that they're okay until help does arrive, then that's the best thing to do. That's more or less naloxone training in a nutshell.
You know, Sudbury's a really, really nice city, actually. Great people, great downtown core, and it's the same as any other city in Canada. I get people saying, well, it's not in my area, it's not in my... Oh, yes, it is. And if it's not in your area, guess what? It's coming. Now, we're not supposed to pick up the waters. I pick them up anyway, because when I get back to my desk, I'm going to have 2 or 3 calls with, there's syringes everywhere. And we go there and it's a bunch of waters, because they don't understand the difference. Like I said, we're new to this. People are just learning. Anything you see here, like paraphernalia, is just from last year, believe it or not. Still caps and still waters. This is all old stuff, because they're not here because the whole thing's under construction. We'll go across the street now. That's Lloyd Street up there, that apartment building. Yeah, that'll be a treat. I pulled 3,400 out of it on Wednesday, and believe it or not, I pulled 5,000 out of it yesterday. And it's not always on the ground, but there is a lot on the ground. But it's sometimes people come out and you're standing there, and we're known as the blue coats. And you're standing there and the guy will come out and just plunk them down in front of you. Like, oh my goodness. And we can't carry them. So I have to call it in and have a truck come and pick them up. We got a chance to cross. This building being evacuated, emptied, whatever you want to call it. They're all being evicted. They're not taking it well. Somebody threw a fridge out a 4-story window. Right now you can just see all the waters here. We pick up here every morning, lots. Jerry might have been here. I didn't tell him to stay away from this one. We see the cookers. Mostly the cookers we don't really care about unless we see something in it. There's the most dangerous thing in the world. Someone could die with that. Yeah. Banana peel, that's not how I want to go. Now, we emptied this yesterday, and despite that, there are syringes in it. It's a slow day. Seriously. I can't take you inside the building. It's just a whole nother world. There will be people at any time you walk into this building, there will be people sitting there injecting in the hallway, in the stairwells. It's hard to imagine, really, but I understand. I see every side of the coin here, and it's kind of goofy. I mean, 2 years ago, I was a finished carpenter, and you know what I knew about drugs? Wow. Now I need a brain enema because it's just, I would like to forget some of what I've seen, but now I see both sides of the coin. The guy who bought this building is evicting everybody and redoing the whole building and upping the rent. Well, from his side, I'm like, yeah, if I own it, it's money. I'm not gonna lose. Watch the building go right down to nothing where the city condemns it and I own nothing now. So I get his side. But on the other side, there's 111 people going out on the street. We don't have anywhere to put them, guys. Hang on one sec, guys. I'm gonna run back. You guys wait here, I'll be right back. What's that? You know what, buddy? I'll just empty the container, okay?
Well, there's some in there too. But that's what I picked up in the last day.
Huh.
I don't want to be on camera.
No? Okay. I'll leave them over there.
No, you can bring them over, just don't plug it.
Okay. Yeah. Keep it off him. Hey, guys.
Well, I don't care for my camera, really.
No, you don't care? Okay. It's a documentary.
We had the ambulance here 3 times last night for ODs.
You hear that? He had the ambulance here 3 times last night for ODs. This is what he's picked up in the last couple of days. Okay. Now, because there's no lids on it, I won't take those containers. I will simply dump them. So he can have it back. Hey, buddy. Thanks, man. Stuff like this is not bad. It's a hard container. You don't have to worry about it so much.
That's in a hard container, but in a plastic bag.
Yeah, I see. So the yellow container, guys, there's one more left in there, so be careful. Okay. The yellow container holds 250 syringes. So in total here, you're probably looking around 400. Yesterday, I picked up 5,000 from this building. Somebody came out the door, gave me a suitcase. Yeah. Oh yeah, we'll get that as they go, right? Okay, thank you very much.
Canada is a healthy nation, but not everyone enjoys all the benefits of good health. These health differences are mostly explained by conditions in which we are born, live, play, and work. Also known as the social determinants of health, they include things like our income, housing, education, or job opportunities. Discrimination can make being healthy even more challenging. When some groups face barriers within these determinants more than other groups, this is unfair, and we refer to these as inequities.